Welcome back. Good seeing you. Today we're going to talk about the semi-auto carbine SKS. Many call it the Type 56 SKS, Chinese SKS, Yugo SKS, because there are several variants of that rifle. But in a nutshell, the SKS is a semi-automatic rifle carbine that fires a 7.62 by 39 millimeter round, like an AK-47. Same round. Not that the weapon is like an AK-47. And today I have the pleasure to have 4 different types of SKS. This is a Chinese SKS, which we'll get into more detail later. This is a Yugo Soviet SKS. I'm sorry, this is another Chinese SKS, but Paratrooper version, which, because it's a little shorter, we'll get into it as well. Paratrooper. And this is a Yugo SKS, Soviet SKS, a little different. Oops. And we have another Yugo M59 SKS, which is a M59-66, which is a variant that includes a grenade launcher, which we'll talk about again in more details. Was designed in 1943 and started production in 1945, if I'm not mistaken. It was designed by a gentleman named Sergei Gravilovich Simonov. And SKS stands for Samozardiani Karabini Systemi Simonova. So, loose translation, semi-auto carbine from the Simonov system. So Simonov was also a designer of an anti-tank rifle called the PTS-41 that serves in during the World War. So the PTS-41 tilting locking bolt mechanism is the same operating mechanism that a SKS is based out of. So I don't want to say this is a successor of a PTRS-41, however, it was inspired by the same operating mechanism. Several countries have produced them after the Soviets stopped producing them. They've been produced by those other countries either because on partnership, because those were allies from the Soviet, or with the same tooling and manufacturing instruction. So typically there were Soviet SKS, East German SKS, Chinese SKS, North Korean SKS, Albanian, Romanian, Yugoslavian SKS, and am I missing one? North Vietnamese SKS. So in no particular order. However, the production started with the Soviet in the 1945 time frame, and the SKS was produced from 49 to 58 in the Tula Armory factory, and another set of SKS were produced between 1953 and 54 in the Easyb factory, IZHEVSK. I hope my pronunciation again is not that great. So in terms of that reference, this rifle, for example, has a logo, a mark that's from the Easyb factory. It was built in 1954. I'm going to fold down this bayonet so that I don't run into anything. It was built in this one was produced in 1954 from the Easyb factory. You can tell the difference by the way the rifle looks. So there are different woods. So I was talking about the Yugo 1954 production, and you can tell because this one has what we call a blade bayonet. So it's more like a blade knife versus the Chinese. I'm gonna sit it here actually. I don't want to damage anything. Versus the Chinese SKS. They are not the only one with a spike bayonet, but this model with the spike bayonet has a spike bayonet, which is more pointy, as you can tell. More of a spike versus a blade shape. So let's try to talk about these in terms of timeline. So from all these four, these kind of came first, right? 1954 production out of the Easyb factory. Many other rifles came out of the Tula factory armory. This is a third stage design because, and I think these all are as well, maybe not this variant right here. By that, it meant the man on the gas block, and I'll have a close-up look later, but if you can see, there's a little more curvature on the gas block versus some that were kind of straight up, and the next design was at a 45-degree angle, and the third one I think has a little curve on the front. Wood is different. The markings are different. Out of this, in terms of collectability and value and class, this would be the top one. This one especially has a laminated stock, so it's very shiny, laminated stock. As you can see, much darker color on the finish, the bluing, blade bayonet. Back on the back of the SKS is a little chamber with a little port door. This is where the cleaning kit was located. If there's one on this Yugo right here. So when you pull that door, you have the cleaning kit that is accessible there, that contains your cleaning brushes and the like, and even a little rod to push, a push pin, so you can service your farm. But the coolest part is this becomes a handle for running your cleaning rod through the rifle. I did forget to mention all the SKSs, they all have this cleaning rod. Right below the bayonet, it has a little chamber. They all have this cleaning rod there. Let me fold this back. And then you install it like so. And you can use this as a handle to run your brush through your bore or vice versa. So pretty cool. All the cleaning equipment available with the rifle. I found that pretty neat, having all the necessary equipment to at least do a quick cleaning while you're out on the field without carrying extra parts, right? And it just goes back in the buttstock of this rifle. Depending on the variant and SKS, and depending on the length of the blade, like the Paratrooper having a short blade, the cutout on the stock varies. So if you see the M59 66 grenade launcher has a much, let me deploy it, has a much longer cutout in the stock because to accommodate for the longer, bigger blade. And the spike bayonet on this Chinese Type 56 also has a wider cut and longer because it's a spike bayonet. So regardless of your variant or the country where the SKS come from, there are two things that really define an SKS, two distinctive features. A permanently attached magazine, which takes 10 rounds of 7.62 by 39, which you can load by hand, by dropping them in there and pushing them down, or using a stripper clip, which I have one somewhere. You put the 10 rounds on a stripper clip and then you press them down in, and then you release the, once you press them, you release the bolt and the firearm is loaded. The second one is also a permanently fixed bayonet. Bayonets on the SKS are mounted to the barrel and permanently attached. From my limited research, depending on the serial number, the Soviet SKS that have a serial number under 9 million typically have a blade bayonet, and the ones that have a serial number above 9 million, like this one, which starts in the 11 million time, they have a spike bayonet. The SKS has serial numbers written depending on the production. Serial number on the magazine attached, on the side of the receiver, inside the part on the barrel, on the bottom of the trigger guard. Where else did I see a serial number on this bad boy? In this case, someone had engraved it into the stock, and definitely inside some of the mechanism once you open the rifle on the bolt itself. So this one actually doesn't have a serial number engraved onto the bolt, which is interesting. But it has a serial number on the side of the receiver. It doesn't have the serial number on the back of the magazine. It doesn't have a serial number on the trigger guard, or it looks like it was shaved off. So, that's interesting. This may have been remanufactured or rebuilt because, again, the Paratrooper was not something that was made from factory, right? It was a commercial import. It was really for commercial purposes that they came up with the Paratrooper model. Let's see. Serial number on the bolt, magazine, receiver, trigger guard. Yep, that's matching. And the stock, so that matches the other one. The fact that it has on the same spot. Serial number on the side, the bolt, bottom of the magazine, trigger guard. So typically they all do. There's also a little fun fact, depending on the variant and the country of origin, the safety buttons has a little bit of different design. So this one has a tiny little checkering effect there, so you can grip it. On this Chinese SKS, it's smooth, doesn't have the checkering. On this Chinese Paratrooper, it has a checkering. And on this Yugo M59 66, it does have a checkring. So those little details, I found them interesting as you compare firearms, right? Even within the same Chinese SKS, Chinese were constantly reviewing the manufacturing and changing. So you will have variants on the same rifle, although they're both Chinese SKS, these two. But I'm guessing also, depending on the usage and depending on who put it together, those little differences vary. But it's fun to kind of, you may think you're buying the same rifle twice, but they may both be different. They may each have unique features. For example, if you want to be picky, and some of the lines checkered on the safety button here are at a perpendicular angle, a little more angular, and some on these ones are straight up and down. Safety, I don't think I mentioned the safety. On the SKS, the safety is a little button next to the trigger guard. So when it's aligned to the border of the trigger, the safety is off. When you push it, the safety is on. So if you want to fire the rifle, you put it down. Again, this is unloaded, right? So it's a natural. I found it very simple and very smart, because naturally, as you put your finger on the trigger when you're ready to fire, it's aligning to the curve. If you feel like there's something in your way of your finger, or you can feel it, that means your safety is on. So you can quickly pull it down and operate your trigger. The Chinese produced the SKS from 1956 until now, until today. There may be still some in production, and that's why it's called Type 56. And this one particularly comes from factory 26. There's a marking on the receiver here. And based on the serial number, I believe this one was made in 1967, if I'm not mistaken. But there were quite a few variants between a Soviet SKS and a Chinese SKS. Typically, for example, there were some minor tweaks where the lack of they weren't milling receivers anymore, they were stamping them. Some of the bore sights and the refinish are not the same. Even the thumb rest on the stock here, I noticed there's clear difference between the width of the thumb, thumb finger rest on the trigger guard. They seem to be wider on the Chinese SKS versus the Yugoslavian one that are that are a little more narrow. Chrome line barrel on these ones, chrome line barrel. There are definitely millions of those produced once the Chinese, which were allies, Soviet allies, started manufacturing them. Some of the interesting fact is that there were some Chinese produced SKS that were called Sony Soviet because they were produced in factories in China, but with manufacturing overseeing and management of the Soviet, but on a very short limited run until they were turned over completely to the Chinese. So if you can find those, I believe sometimes those are very prized by collector. Many of the Chinese SKS have their 26 in a proof mark, which is a triangle with a 26 number in it. And I'm going to sit this one down. And this other Chinese SKS has the same mark due to the production. So they are usually also referred as Norinco SKS. So it's a factory from where they're produced. And then the importer, they usually all have an import marks on them. Before we talk into the Paratrooper, we'll cover a couple of facts, another couple of facts about the SKS. Up to about at least 69 countries adopted the SKS at some point or another, not necessarily as an official military firearm, but as an import or as a filling the gap kind of rifle to either militia, small conflict, or even in ceremonial and administrative duties. So marching guard, and so on and so forth. But it's the SKS have been around the world, basically. That's what I'm trying. In terms of the Soviet, and in terms of this Soviet SKS right here, the SKS was only a official military rifle for about a year between 1949 and 1950, if I'm not mistaken, because it was issued to the armed force as a carbine, but mostly the second non-infantry troops and second line of defense. But as soon as the AK-47 when the AK-47 was issued, they kicked the SKS out in terms of being an official military weapon, and mostly because this was not a good full automatic. It's not a full automatic rifle. So they favor the full automatic rifle, and they favor the little shorter size of the AK-47 in the Soviet armies. However, in the Chinese armies, or later on in the Chinese militia, they like the kind of a long range semi-sniping capability of the SKS, because the type of fighting is a little different, right? It's more about ambushing your enemy or shooting from afar and trying to kind of be sneaky. So, and then resorting to last resort, having some way to engage close range. So the Chinese and the Vietnamese troops kind of like the SKS for that purpose. This other Chinese SKS right here is a Paratrooper model. It's called Paratrooper because it's 2 inch shorter than the regular SKS. It may be hard to see, but I have another footage coming up. So as you can see right here, assuming the stock out together, this is a little shorter. The Paratrooper was not really, it was a commercial import, meaning as the SKS was designed, there were no Paratrooper configuration. This is a request that came from commercial importers to make it more appealing as one of those variants we discussed. So but I do like the Paratrooper because it feels more compact. It gives you an 18-inch, I believe 18-inch or 18.5-inch barrel versus a 20-inch barrel. So very compact, interesting model, but everything else is the same, right? Well, besides the bayonet, everything has been reduced, the barrel and the bayonet. So the Paratrooper has a shorter bayonet. They took a spike bayonet and they cut it in this case. So, but it feels a little lighter, but not by too much, but a little bit. But I just like it's more manageable. It gets closer to the size of a AK-47 AR, so less. And it's not as long, right? But I like it. Looks pretty good. I do like the Paratrooper model. Okay, the other variants we have here today is this bad boy. This is a Yugoslavian Yugo M59 66. Big bayonet blade. As you can tell, immediately you notice there's something that looks like a muzzle flash device, a flash hider, or muzzle suppressor. That's because this is actually equipped with a rifle grenade launcher capabilities. So the SKS M59 66, as it's called because it was produced from 1959 to 1966, as a variant from the Yugoslavian. This one is a Zastava produced. This added Yugoslavian rifle. This added the capability to fire a grenade from the rifle. And the way it's done is you have a different set of sight, same rear sight, similar, but you have a front ladder looking sight. It looks like a ladder which you can lift. Let me bring this bayonet down before we do anything crazy. And it has markings to fire the grenade and launch the grenade up to the effective grenade range. So when you lift the ladder, the front sight, you also have a gas port control button here, which you have to press and lock in order to now direct the gas to the front of the barrel, which will then propel the grenade, which you will have attached here through the grenade launcher. So it makes sure it dissipates and it allows you to redirect the pressure to the front to propel the grenade. And the way the grenade launcher works is you need to use a special blank cartridge, which will just detonate and create enough pressure to launch the projectile, which in this case is a grenade. This is also a nice coveted change that collector enjoy, because this variant was made by the Yugoslavian, and I really like the way the grenade launcher barrel looks. Another fact is, in order to not make a mistake, you cannot close the sight without reopening your barrel port, your gas port. So that allows you to have an individual or a soldier not make the mistake of closing the port and trying to use the rifle back into its normal configuration. Yep. So the same way, if the gas port are closed, you cannot lift up the sight. So it's still a safety, gas control safety feature so that the person operating the rifle doesn't try to use it in a standard rifle configuration when it's supposed to be in rifle grenade launcher, or vice versa. I hope that kind of taught you a little bit about the SKS rifle. The two Chinese SKS, one being a Paratrooper, the M59 66 grenade launcher, 22mm grenade launcher SKS, and the Yugo SKS from the Easyb factory. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like, subscribe, and share the content. That will help me grow the channel and provide you more fun content, and continue to find cool people who are willing to share the collection. Like some of these come from my buddy ER. He loaned me a couple of his rifles for the video. So If nothing else, stay safe. Let's respect each other. Enjoy, have a good time, and talk to you soon.